On paper, a $100,000 salary looks like a clear financial milestone. It sounds like the point where money should stop feeling tight, savings should grow easily, and most financial stress should fade. Yet a large number of people who cross that line report the same thing. It still feels like there is never enough. The numbers say comfortable. Daily life feels barely ahead. The core problem is that the headline number, $100,000, has very little to do with how much money actually stays with you and how much can be used to build wealth. The gap between gross income and real, usable money is much larger than most people expect. And because that gap is not obvious, many people assume they are doing something wrong personally rather than realizing the structure itself is the issue. Take a simple case: a single person earning $100,000 in a typical U.S. city. After federal income tax, state tax, where applicable, Social Security, and Medicare, take home pay often falls to somewhere around $65,000, $72,000 per year, depending on location and deductions. That is before rent or a mortgage, healthcare premiums, insurance, transportation, food, and any debt payments. The six-figure label hides the fact that roughly 35% of the income never reaches their bank account. Most people at this income level also make decisions that feel reasonable but are structurally expensive. They move to a better neighborhood with higher rent or a larger mortgage. They upgrade their car, often with a payment. They eat out more frequently, travel more, and add subscriptions and services that match their new income level. None of these choices feel extreme, and each one seems justifiable. I can afford it now. But each decision quietly converts more of that $100,000 into fixed monthly commitments. At the same time, there is an expectation that a higher salary automatically means higher savings. People believe that once they hit $100,000, money for investing will simply appear. When it does not, they assume the solution is to earn even more, not to examine where the current income is going. The result is a pattern. Income rises, lifestyle costs rise to match it, and the actual amount available for saving and investing changes very little. The consequences show up in the numbers. Someone earning $100,000 who saves 5% of their income is putting aside $5,000 per year. Someone earning $60,000 who saves 15% is saving $9,000 per year. Over 10 years, at a modest 5% annual return, the second person ends with almost twice the invested capital, despite the lower salary. The higher earner feels successful, but has less progress to show for it. The problem is not that $100,000 is a low income. The problem is that most people treat it as a destination rather than a tool. They do what seems normal at that level: better housing, better car, better lifestyle, and assume that the salary itself will handle the rest, without a clear framework for how much should be locked into lifestyle and how much should be directed to wealth building. The experience of earning $100,000 will continue to feel like simply covering an upgraded version of the same life. To understand why a $100,000 salary does not feel like $100,000, we have to look beyond the headline income and examine how that money is structured, how people respond to it, and what is missing in their financial system. First, the structure of the income itself. A salary is paid gross, but life is lived net. Taxes come off the top before any personal decisions are made. In many U.S. states, a $100,000 salary turns into something like $5,500 per month after tax. From that amount, several large, non-optional costs come next: housing, healthcare, transportation, food, and minimum debt payments. If housing takes $2,000, healthcare premiums and out-of-pocket costs take $500. A car payment and insurance take $600. Groceries and basic expenses take $800, $900. The free money left each month is much smaller than people expect. Structurally, the room for error is not as large as the six-figure label implies. Second, behavior changes as income rises. When people cross psychological milestones like $80,000 or $100,000, they often feel pressure, both internal and external, to live in a way that matches that number. This is not always showing off. It can be as simple as choosing a nicer apartment closer to work, upgrading to a newer car for reliability, or saying yes to more social activities and travel. Each change feels justified when looked at alone. The problem is that these decisions are not coordinated. There is rarely a defined rule like no more than 50% of my net income goes to fixed costs. Instead, lifestyle grows through individual choices until the monthly budget is tight again. Consider a practical scenario. Someone goes from earning $70,000 to $100,000. After tax, their monthly take home might increase by roughly $500. On paper, this looks like a lot of breathing room. In practice, they move from a $1,400 apartment to a $2,200 place, add a $500 car payment instead of driving a paid off car, and increase discretionary spending by $300 to $400 per month through restaurants, streaming subscriptions, and small upgrades. Very quickly, the entire raise is allocated. The person still feels like they are just covering bills, but now the bills are higher quality. The savings rate has not changed. Third, there is usually no explicit system that decides what happens to new income. Without a rule such as 50% of every raise goes to investing, every extra dollar is treated as available lifestyle money by default. Human nature fills empty space. If income rises and no plan claims a portion for long term goals, short term wants will consume it. This is not a character flaw, it is a predictable pattern. This is also why standard advice often fails high earners. Suggestions like live below your means or save more are directionally correct, but operationally vague. What does below your means mean at $100,000? Without numbers and percentages, the advice is interpreted in a way that still allows lifestyle to expand until the person feels stretched again. Telling someone to cut back does not address the deeper issue. There was never a rule that defined how much of their income was allowed to become fixed lifestyle in the first place. The result is a familiar feeling. The person works in a professional role, earns a salary many would consider high, and yet experiences the same month to month tension as before. The numbers change, the system did not. When a $100,000 salary does not feel like real financial progress, it usually comes down to a few repeated mistakes. These are not dramatic errors. They are small, logical decisions that compound in the wrong direction over time. The first mistake is treating gross income as if it were spending power. People plan their lifestyle around six figures instead of their true after tax pay. If someone earning $100,000 takes home $300 per month after taxes and benefits, but builds a lifestyle that assumes they effectively have $8,000, the gap must be filled with debt or sacrifice savings. Over years, this mismatch creates a constant feeling of pressure, even though the headline income looks strong. The second mistake is allowing fixed costs to grow without a cap. Housing, car payments, insurance, childcare, and subscriptions quietly expand to consume most of the net income. A common pattern is having 65–75% of take home pay locked into recurring bills. With $5,300 net, that means $3 and $500, $4,000 goes out automatically every month before food or discretionary spending. This leaves little room for saving and investing. The short term consequence is I can't save much right now. The long term consequence is arriving at age 45, 50 with far less invested than the salary would suggest. The third mistake is saving by leftover, not by design. Instead of deciding I save 20% of my net income, many people simply see what is left at the end of the month. With a lifestyle built to match income, the answer is usually not much. Consider two people over 10 years. Person A earns $100,000 and saves 5% of gross, $5,000 per year, invested at 5% annual return. After 10 years, they have about $63,000. Person B earns $70,000 but saves 15% of gross, $10,500 per year at the same 5%. After 10 years, they have about $132,000. The lower earner is more than twice as far ahead because the decision structure is different. The fourth mistake is assuming income growth will fix everything later. Many high earners tell themselves they will start taking it seriously after the next promotion or once certain expenses end. In practice, every new raise is absorbed into an upgraded lifestyle. Over 20 years, this creates a significant gap between potential and reality. Someone who earns an average of $100,000 over 2 decades but saves 5% ends with roughly the same invested amount as someone who earns $60,000 and saves 15–20%. The issue is not how much comes in, but what percentage is captured. The fifth mistake is confusing visible upgrades with financial progress. A larger apartment, a newer car, and better vacations are tangible and immediate. Investment account growth is slower and less visible. This encourages decisions that improve how life feels now while delaying the ability to step back from work later. After 15–20 years, the person may have a high status lifestyle but still depends fully on their job to maintain it. At that point, changing direction is harder because fixed costs are high and expectations, both personal and social, have adjusted. All of these outcomes share the same pattern: a strong income paired with weak decisions. The salary is not the problem. The structure around it is. The solution is not to work harder for even more income. It is to change how the $100,000 is structured and managed. The goal is simple: make sure a meaningful share of that income is converted into assets, not just into a more expensive version of the same life. The first step is to stop thinking in gross terms and build a system around net income. Instead of saying, I make 100K, work with the actual monthly amount that reaches your account after tax and mandatory deductions. Suppose that number is $5,300. That is your real starting point. All decisions should be based on this figure, not on the six-figure label. The second step is to set a hard cap on fixed costs. Fixed costs are recurring payments that do not change much from month to month: housing, car payment, insurance, utilities, basic phone and internet, childcare, subscriptions. A practical rule is to keep these at or below 50% of your net income. In the example, that means no more than about $2,650 per month. If current fixed costs are higher, the task is to gradually bring them down over time through choices at lease renewals, car replacements, and contract changes. This is not instant, but it is mechanical. Every decision moves the fixed cost number closer to the target. The third step is to define a savings and investing rate as a percentage, not a leftover. For many high earners, a target of 20–25% of net income is reasonable. On $5,300 net, 20% is $1,060 per month. That amount should be automated into savings and investments at the start of the month, not at the end. This reverses the usual order. You pay your future self first, then live on what remains. If 20% is not realistic immediately, start with 10–15% and increase it with every raise. The fourth step is to create a rule for all future income growth. A simple version is 50% of every raise or bonus goes to investing and long-term goals. 50% can go to lifestyle. If your net income increases by $800 per month after a promotion, $400 is added to monthly investing, and only $400 is allowed to expand lifestyle. This ensures that each step up in income permanently improves your financial position instead of only upgrading your consumption. The fifth step is to separate accounts by function: one account for fixed bills, one for variable spending, food, going out, small purchases, and one for savings and investments. Automated transfers move money out of your main account on payday, first into savings and investing, then into bills. Whatever remains is discretionary. This structure reduces the need for constant decisions and makes overspending visible quickly. This system is stable because it does not rely on willpower or detailed budgeting. It relies on a few fixed percentages and automation. It does not require extreme frugality or drastic lifestyle cuts. It simply ensures that as income grows, so does the portion converted into assets. Over time, this is what makes a $100,000 salary feel like progress rather than a treadmill. Put simply, making a $100,000 salary feel like 100K is not about changing the number on your contract. It is about imposing a clear structure on that income and keeping it stable over time. The system we have described has five moving parts that work together. You think and plan in net income, not gross. You cap fixed costs at a defined percentage of that net income. You set a savings and investing rate as a percentage, not as whatever is left. You apply a fixed rule to every raise and bonus, so income growth improves both lifestyle and savings. You separate accounts by function and automate flows, so the system runs with minimal decisions. When this structure is applied, the experience of earning 100K changes over time. After 1 year, the main change is clarity. You know exactly how much comes in after tax, how much is locked into fixed costs, and how much is being invested each month. If you decide that 20% of net income goes into savings and investments, and your net is $5,300 per month, you are moving about $1,060 every month into assets on purpose. Even if you start at 10-15% and work upward, you now have a number and a rule, not a guess. The feeling of "I don't know where it all goes" begins to fade. After 5 years, the effect becomes visible in actual balances. Using the same example, $160 per month invested at a conservative 5% annual return, you approach roughly $70,000 in invested assets. That is separate from emergency savings and separate from lifestyle. Without a system, it is common for someone at this income level to reach year 5 with minimal net worth growth, despite strong earnings. With the system, there is a clear, measurable result that reflects your decisions, not just your effort at work. After 10 years, the structure becomes decisive. Keeping contributions at $1,060 per month at 5% annual return, invested assets move into the range of $160,000 and above. If your income grows and your 20% rule and 50% of each raise to investing rule are applied consistently, the invested amount is higher. At this stage, the salary does not only fund current lifestyle, it has built a separate financial base that reduces dependence on your job. The label 100K is no longer just a number, it is backed by assets. The immediate steps are straightforward. Calculate your actual monthly net income after tax and deductions. List all fixed costs and determine what percentage of net they consume. Set a target savings investing rate, for example, 15-20% of net, and automate that transfer at the start of each month. Define a simple raise rule. A fixed share of every raise and bonus is automatically added to your monthly investing amount. Open and label separate accounts for bills, variable spending and savings, investing, and set automatic transfers accordingly. None of this requires extreme cutting or complex tools. It requires deciding in advance how your income is allowed to be used and enforcing that decision through automation. The underlying message is simple. A $100,000 salary feels disappointing when it is unstructured. Once a clear system directs where each additional dollar goes, the same income level starts to produce visible, cumulative progress. Over years, that progress matters far more than the headline number.